Getting loud. Okay. And we are on. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Extra Connections Live. I'm James Lott Jr., your host. Not like the first time I've done this. I've done like 4,000 episodes of the show. But we're here tonight talking about music. I can't wait to do that tonight. Thanks for joining us. It is Sunday night, and it's May. It's my birthday week. It starts today, a week from today. My birthday happens. So I'm very excited. I made another year so far, I guess. We'll see what I guess 7 more days. But I'm a big music fan. And me and Jack Farmer had our show. James Lott Jr. is the DJ. James Lott Jr. is the farmer. Jack Farmer is the DJ. We've talked music, and we're on hiatus for a little bit. I'm sure we're going to come back. I'm trying to find other people I could talk to about music. And this episode is something very different than you may understand. You see myself, and you see my guest, and we're going to talk about people who look like us in the rock game, in the punk, ska, new wave, metal, whatever it's about, all of that in the rock game. But I want to introduce to you my friend, who some of you may know from AfterBuzz TV and other things and things that we've done. But it's our first show actually together by ourselves, Josh Alonzo. Josh in the booth. Hi, Josh.
Hey, James, how are we doing? First and foremost, thank you. This is like going on Oprah's show. You are the media mogul here at you are and still are to this day the media mogul at AfterBuzz TV. So it's like an absolute honor to be on the show. You had so many great guests, and now you're stuck with me. So
I'm good stuck, Josh. Thank you. I'll take all the praise. I'll take it. No, thank you. No, so folks, you don't know this. He introduced some of my shows. I did over 805 shows at AfterBuzz TV. So I did do a lot of shows there over a 6-year period. I did do a lot of stuff. And now my own network. And so I get to have people like Josh on my show. Hello, Kirsten Marie, people are in the chat room. Come on in. The water's fine. If you have anything you want to chime in and talk about that we mentioned, please chime in and talk about it. First, I'd like to ask you how you're doing. How are things going?
I'm doing pretty well. Just a little bit earlier, went to a great niece's birthday party. So that was really cool just to be out and about and actually experience, a party setting. It was outside, outdoors in the park and everything, but it was good to see people again. So, we're all fully vaccinated for the most part. So it's great to be out and just have that sense of normalcy again, because this past year, as we all know, it's had its ups and downs.
Yes. Yesterday I saw our friend Mrs. Serafini. Let me tell you hello. She loves you.
Tell her I said hello as well. If she's watching, hello.
Hello, Marissa. I love Josh. So, and she and I posted a picture. We posted a picture and everything yesterday. So on my Instagram, you can see that. But we're both fully vaccinated. We saw each other the first time in a year. So I know how you feel. It's like, it was nice being out and about. Beautiful day in Los Angeles. Nice being out amongst other people, not hiding in a corner.
Yeah. Hopefully, like if she is watching this, Marissa, we still got to spar. Your Krav Maga against my stuff. We got to get it going.
She got her green belts. So
that's awesome to hear.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I'll tell her. Actually, if you're a JLJ aficionado, we do our When Calls the Heart show on Mondays here, the Hardy. So I will mention that to her and see if she said.
The open challenge, it's set.
I love it. I will tell her that. I will definitely tell her that. Good. Okay. Everybody's coming. Okay, good. Okay, so I want to start off. Josh and I have had talks off camera, kind of on different message things, and we brought up a little bit on our friend Flobo Boyce's show, What's Up Flobo After Hours, about music, and we both like similar types of music. And I'm obviously a lot older than you, Harm. But I think it's a great thing. It's just a smidge. But I think it's a great thing because music can be passed down, and that's the whole thing, and or discovered. I mean, that's the great thing about music, and be discovered. And we both have a love of rock music, punk music, different things like that. Some reggae. He's wearing a Bad Brain shirt, which we'll talk about them, of course. There you go. I mean, hello. But it's one of those things where I was there for much of the beginnings. He discovered it later, and we're gonna talk about that today on the show, and all of that. And one of the questions I want to bring out the first part of the discussion anyway is people forget that there were Latino or Latinx, whatever you want to call them, Hispanic, Chicano, whatever words you want to use, and Black folks who are part of these movements.
Yes.
It seems like a lot of our non-Black Latinx counterparts get most of the attention. But that's what starts discussion, right? Josh, we're talking about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, our discussion from the last time was just all those figures and everything not getting the recognition as, the Anglo counterparts to that. Like, as far as just everything going on in the LA scene in the 1980s, you had so many prominent members of bands who people didn't know were actually people of color. Like, for example, you had Alice Bag of the Bag. She's straight up Latina. Pat Smear from Germs, he is half black and half Native American, I believe. And there's so many others as well, but then it just never gets the notoriety. And I think that that is key, especially since a lot of people do say that rock is sort of the whitewash genre of music, which I highly dispute all the time.
Well, completely. And I'm going to mention, because you just want to be brought back in time, I'll mention to you some of the legendary places I saw some of those people in concert. The Troubadour, the Roxy, the Satellite, all here in Los Angeles. Madame Wong's West, my favorite places in Santa Monica, my favorite places. It's gone. Gazzari's, the Rainbow, of course, the Whiskey, of course. The Viper Room opened after I left. The Viper Room came in the 90s. I wasn't in LA anymore, so I didn't see it then. In Sacramento was the Crest Theater. That's where I saw Skinny Puppy and Guar and all them there. And then in New York, CBGB's. I used to go there years ago, and I went there years ago. And in San Francisco, the Fillmore, which is a great venue to watch.
The Fillmore, yep.
Oh, I love the Fillmore. Great. I've seen so many great artists there. But I want to mention, you mentioned the 80s and that in the scene. I was part of many of those scenes. I worked at record stores. Music Plus Records is gone. Tower and all those. And we used to get passes to go to see all these. And there were bands that didn't even make it, that we used to see them all the time, know all the members and stuff. But there are a lot, and I want to bring up another thing too. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was a couple of groups that actually, I didn't notice till later, they were actually Latino and had huge hits. And one of them was Question and the Mysterians. 96 Tears, #1 hit.
Yep.
Did not know they were all Latino.
Neither did I.
I learned that recently on a show. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs with that Boule Boule, that song, Latino.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. Last names like Rodriguez and shit, all these last names.
Wow.
The Champs, Tequila. Latino.
I love the Champs. Oh my goodness.
They also na 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 Latino. That's the
wow.
And the Headhunters. And then see the ones that kind of got through were like Richie Valens, La Bamba. Carlos Santana, of course. I mean, he got through.
Oh, Santana, of course.
And many of us remember Freddie Fender. If you are Latino, you
know
of course. Fender. You know who
you have. If you know Freddie Fender, you have to know the Texas Tornadoes as well.
Exactly, right. And then Jose Feliciano, my Puerto Rican.
Oh, of course. Feliz Navidad.
Yeah, Feliz Navidad, of course. But You Light My Fire, which was his first hit, which is the remake of The Doors. So there's a few that actually were able, and even with Freddie Fender, he changed his name.
Yeah.
Or Anglican. But these other groups, they had huge hit songs. We sing today in millions of movies, and they were all Latino. I learned this on a thing called the Latin Connection the other day. So I did not know that.
Okay. That's really cool, because if you think about it, all those people that you have named, really highly recognizable, especially if you only know one of their songs. It's never really celebrated that they were people of color. It's nice that they did have success with their music and everything, but I feel like their cultural impact should have been elevated even more just as a representative to us, because that not only does that inspire musicians, it also inspires people of color to pick up those instruments and stuff and go aspire to be something like that. So
that is you hit the nail on the head. I think representation matters. See someone like you or who looks like you do something you're thinking, I might want to do that. Very important. I was in a band called Mangina, as he knows, back in the 90s, San Francisco. But it was one of those things where I saw folks that looked like me who were in bands who did some of the music that I did. I saw them. So I was able to think, I could do it too. A lot of times you don't see them, you think, well, can I do it? Should I do it? You don't know, you're afraid. But you see that one person, you go, wow. Ask any musician, will tell you they saw someone and their world opened up. And then they go, I can do it also. And I think that's very, very, very important. Rock music started, some people say, with Ike Turner, with Rock in '88. And a rock, country, it all came from R&B, which is rhythm and blues. You get later to styles like punk, new wave, ska, mod, all these different things that were coming out, which I remember. I was a teenager, and I remember the skinny ties, all the buttons, rude boy, all that stuff. I remember all that stuff. I want to find out from you. So, who introduced you to some of these styles of music? Like, for example, Babbage. Who introduced you to that?
I mean, it all stems, for me personally, it all stems from video games in itself. I was a huge video game kid when I was growing up. You know, as a kid from the 90s, I grew up playing a lot of skateboarding video games, a lot of extreme sports style of things. So the soundtracks to that really connected to me. Like, even if I didn't know who it was or anything, it's just some of those songs really just hit to me, and I just really like the groove. And, you know, later on in the years as I got older in high school and college and everything, I would hear those songs. I'm like, oh my God, I remember that song when I was this years old playing Tony Hawk and just like, you know, ollieing off the thing or whatever. And it's so cool. And not only that, I had older cousins as well who would like that, some of that type of stuff. You know, a lot of the older cousins who I had, you know, they were growing up, they were teenagers in the late 90s, early 2000s. So that was when new metal was the big thing.
Yes.
So new metal, like stuff like Mudvayne, Korn, System of a Down, Deftones, bands like that is what I was hearing from my older male cousins. And so hearing that, and obviously the influences that, you know, my family had. My family is immigrants. They came from Guatemala. So of course, hearing that Latin side of music and growing up in LA, very hip hop oriented culture here as well. And so just having just like a mixture of different sounds and everything definitely just influenced me a lot, not only as an individual, but it also you know, influences me in the creative side. I mean, if you see my background,
See it.
photography, prints, and everything, it's just a mixture of different things. And I feel like music plays a big proponent to who I am as a person and in my life as well.
Some of the groups that I saw back in the day, they were Latino. I don't know if you recognize any of these.
Mhm.
Prop 187,
Yep.
NAFTA, Los Crudes, of course, was huge.
Hmm.
They were bands. They came from Chicago. I remember seeing them in concert at some of the smaller venues, and they were Latino, and they were into punk and rock, and they were producing these songs in the same style as the white counterparts, and it was
Yeah.
wonderful. I was they just again, I was there for the music. So whoever was there, I
Hmm.
was happy to see. But it was kind of nice to see that they were Latino also. Okay, that's fine. That's good. And later on for me, it was a group called Kinky, which I talked about once before. I love
Yeah.
them. They do all kinds of, they do rock and a little bit of dance, a little bit of this, and they're just, you know, groups like like Mana and also Motley and all them. They do kind of, they throw like a gumbo of styles in there, but rock
Hmm.
is part of it. Rock is part of it.
Yeah.
Rock and roll is part of it. Right?
I think if, you know, people who don't necessarily consider themselves as rock fans, they do know certain songs of it and they do like certain rhythms of it. You know, obviously there's a lot of people who, you know, think rock or metal or punk itself is all that and everything. To the extent, yes, there is some music that is like that, but there's other stuff that is more groove oriented and everything. Perfect example would be my sensei. He grew up listening to a whole assortment of stuff. He himself is 53. He grew up in the 80s in the West Coast scene in LA and everything. So everything that you mentioned as far as seeing shows growing up, he was the exact same shows as well. He'd always tell stories of his dad watching the Doors and Beatles and every other groups like that. So he grew up in the scene and everything. So he would tell me that, you know, this one time at the, oh my goodness, what's that one in the Valley? There's a venue. It's a really historic venue.
Oh,
The Country Club. The Country Club.
Country Club,
So
yes.
he told me that once he was a metalhead in a sense, but when he saw Testament live, he saw, like, going back to the whole representation thing. My sensei is Native American. The lead singer of Testament, Chuck Billy, is a Native American man himself. So seeing him on stage, he's just like, holy shit, there's someone up there, up here. And then not only is it like aggressive thrash metal and everything, but there is some sense of groove to it as well. So, you know, there is certain music that has that grooviness to it. Like a whole lot of people in the 90s really got into Pantera because of the whole groove orientation of it, you know? So not only in a sense that, you know, you don't have to be a fan of it, but then sometimes when you hear a certain song, you gain the appreciation of it, and then you hear the influences beyond that song. I think it really has that resonance a lot to a whole lot of people, even if they're not fans of the genre itself.
I remember when I was a fan of Anthrax, which was speed metal, of course,
Hmm.
and then they did a song with Public Enemy, and
Yes,
people,
it is.
and it worked. I mean, people don't understand. I mean, it worked, and so I'm gonna go backwards. So that's something that's one example. But as he and I talked once online about this, that's why I'm like Keith Haring should going back in time. The New York City
Keith Haring sucks.
Go back. There you
Keith
go. Oh,
Haring
you're
sucks.
wearing it too. Oh my God, it's so funny. Because
There you go.
and I think it's the dog in the back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, I have those. That's funny. You're wearing yours too. How funny. Yes, I love him. So I used to go to New York all the time. My family's in New York. So I used to go down to the downtown scene. I'd see all of the convergence of punk and new wave and new rap. It was all, and there's no words for it. It was just kind of like everybody was kind of together and they all commingled, which again kind of showed unity. It wasn't so divisive, like all the whites over here and all the blacks. It was like everybody was together. It was like as long as you're into the music and the movement, that's all that mattered. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much the other stuff. It's like you gotta be if you're a metalhead, you're a metalhead. If you're a punk, that's the whole thing, right?
I think that was kind of the division in itself. Like sometime like from what I've heard in the late 80s, early 90s, that if you were a metalhead, you had to strictly just listen to metal. If you were a punk, you had to listen to strictly punk. And then it kind of just went into all these old little cliques and this sort of level of elitism. Even when I was in high school, God forbid if you listen to something outside of metal, you were just like a poser, you were just this and that and everything. And you kind of had to, in a sense, hide some of that personality to you, because one thing I like to say to people is like I listen to everything from ABBA to Anthrax. Like I have no shame in listening to anything because I love all types of music. I mean, majority of my record collection is a lot of classical and a lot of jazz and a lot of blues. There are some punk records in there, but then I like listening to anything else. But I always feel like there is a certain level of elitism when you're younger. When you get older and you start to really get yourself in, I guess, in a cultural mindset of just like open yourself out to more different subgenres of music, I think that's where you grow as a person. So I always, I guess, not frown upon it, but then I always kind of just say, well, why do you have to listen to just one thing? Why can't you just get out and listen to something else? I'm totally fine with people saying, yeah, I don't like this. I gave it a try and everything. But if you've never heard it and then you say, yeah, I hate it, it straight out sucks, I don't want to listen to that, they're not really opening themselves out and they're just kind of just sheltering themselves in a little shell. So that's, I always feel like people should just open themselves out to new experiences. It doesn't have to be music in itself. It should be anything in life.
Yeah. Well, do you think also as you get older, you realize you have moods? You like, I'm in a mood for jazz. I want something for
Yeah.
me. I want to hear some salsa. I just want to listen to some nice salsa music. It's a Sunday afternoon. It's sunny. And then maybe at night, as I'm getting winding down, I want to hear some cool, smooth jazz. Maybe in the morning when I'm waking up, I want to hear something thrashing and get me going. I mean, like, do you feel
Yeah.
you feel that too also?
Oh no, absolutely. I think like when you're younger, it's always black and white. You either listen to one thing and you listen to something secretly at the other end.
Sure,
But as you get older, you just start to experience, I'm just thinking more of an artistic sense. You start experimenting with different colors. Instead of just being so blatantly black and white, you mix in a little bit of blue, mix in a little bit of green, a little orange, a little pink, a little red, and you start mixing up your palette just a little bit more. And then you kind of create a sense of style to you, because that in itself, creates who you are. So if you're in a day where you're working out, of course you want something that'll motivate you and just really pump up your things and everything. But say if you're having a rough day, there are certain soundtracks that really help you either put yourself more into the middle, like an emo mood, I guess, or put yourself into like more uplifting spirit in a type of sense. Like there's times where I want to unwind and everything. I like to listen to reggae. I like to listen to ska just to pretty much get me in an upbeat mood and just relax and everything. If I feel a little bit broody and mooding, then I'll put on some new wave like Joy Division, The Cure, The Smiths, something to make me feel just like, life sucks, and I'm just gonna ponder on it for just a couple minutes, or something uplifting. Like right now I love listening to this group by the name of Johnny Swim. It's a two-person group. My girlfriend introduced me, actually. One of the singers is the daughter of Donna Summer, actually.
What?
So yep.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
Where's my pen? Wait a minute.
Rewind.
The last musical I saw before the pandemic was the Donna Summer musical. That's what a big
There you
fan I
go.
am of hers. So her daughter, it's called
Her
Johnny.
daughter. You look up Johnny Swim.
Oh.
The best way I can describe it is uplifting folk acoustic guitar type of music. It is beautiful to listen to.
Okay,
I mean,
wrote down.
I've never perfect. I've never heard of them before until meeting my girlfriend and just kind of listening to her music and everything, because she and I have similar interest in music as well. She loves listening to R&B. She loves listening to soul. We both love listening to hip hop. We grew up. We're both '90s kids, so we love listening to '90s hip hop and R&B and soul and everything like that. And then she introduced me to Johnny Swim, and when I listened to it, at first I was just like, yeah, it's okay. But then the more I started listening to it and the more I started getting the resonance of some of the message, I started looking into some of the lyrics, and a lot of it is very motivational, very uplifting. And I'm just like, wow. And I remember earlier this week, wasn't having the greatest day at work. It was really stressful. I started listening to one of the songs. It was called Home. And the message in that is just pretty much just like anywhere you go in life, even if it's always rough and everything, there always is a sense of home to make you feel safe and very uplifting. So it's like music in itself really helps in a therapeutic sense where it helps you get through a depressive state of mind. Of course, through this pandemic, we've all been listening through music in some fashion or form, and it's gotten us out of some really deep ruts. I'm personally speaking for myself. I don't know if you were the same way,
No, we
James.
do. No, we do.
Yeah.
Well, also, I create music, so that also helps me get through it. And I listen to music a lot of times for inspiration.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a different period. Like someone was saying this late 60s, early 70s folk music all of a sudden. Lots of James Taylor and Carole King. And all of a sudden I'll switch. I'm listening to Eurythmics and Duran Duran, the 80s stuff.
Ooh.
And I'll switch. I'm listening to Evanescence and Linkin Park. And so, I mean, I go through these periods and it influences my music. I mean, I actually
Yeah.
create music. So so yes, the pandemic was, music was a very important part of my soundtrack.
I
So,
think it was definitely a really cool time to like learn and like discover new things. Like for me, for instance, Johnny Swim, one of those things throughout the pandemic where I really found that out and really added to my repertoire. I mean, as far as just like you say you're a musician and everything, I'm trying to learn an instrument myself at the moment if I can get it out of this stranglehold of a mess
he's
at the
trying with
moment.
one hand. He's trying with one hand. He's trying. Okay,
There we
play
go.
something for me. Play something for me. Can you play anything?
I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
Do you know the chords? Do you know anything about that yet? Do you know the?
I'm still trying to learn some of the basic instrumentations and everything, but
Okay.
the first bass line I want to learn, uh, Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads. That's the first bass line I want to learn.
Killer.
Psycho Killer, just to say,
I know that song. I know that song. I know that song. That's
that's
so
an
funny.
amazing song.
Side note, folks. The side group of Talking Heads was Tom Tom Club with Genius of Love, which
Mm-hmm.
was a very different song. I mean, who knew those two people get together and it's a whole R&B, dancey. I mean, it was very different. Out of that punk, new wave, group. They were considered punk and new wave at first. I mean, that's
Yeah,
how. A little side
I
note.
think that's what a lot of people don't really give credit to pug music for. A lot of the musicians, when they were first starting off, they had a certain attitude and everything, and they flat out couldn't play their instruments. But once they got better, and once they had like experimentation to it and adding different influences, it created a whole bunch of different things. Like obviously, a lot of people, you know, I don't really think of Blondie as in some aspects they are a new wave band, but then they did come out of that punk scene in the late 70s, early 80s. And at first, they were really good, but then they developed that mainstream poppiness to it, which I still love myself. So
Okay, so we got so so we're gonna mention Blondie. Yeah, you mentioned Blondie because Blondie's
mhm.
very controversial in the sense that they were born out of the punk movement. They did disco song, which was called Heart of Glass. I remember that song came out. It was like, what? And it went number one. And then,
Had a heart of glass.
so they did that, but then then he had a Titus High, which was very
Mhm.
reggae
Yeah.
influenced. I remember that whole summer we were playing that. And then Rapture, the first number
With
one song featuring rap in it, and she's actually rapping Fab Five Freddy, the whole thing. So I'm like, they transcend. They were considered punk at first, then they were considered new wave. They were just, I guess, just considered legends. I mean, they kind of went that direction. So it's funny you mentioned them because they were kind of that was a weird. I remember when it came out, it was like, what are they doing? Disco. I mean, disco was huge. I remember that as a kid, and they did a disco song. But they kept saying it's our kind of disco. Like they didn't just like. They went to Steve. Yeah, it's funny you say that. Also, something you said. Also, I just want to mention for folks out there who are this. Josh is right. A lot of these groups and artists who started out punk or ska or mod or whatever words you want to use, they begat other things. Just for example, the Specials and English Beat, two of my favorite
Mhm.
bands. Love them.
Love them.
Love them. Had the pins, had the skinny tie, had the hat, did the whole thing. Early 80s. They begat Fun Boy 3, which later begat Bananarama. So there you go, it goes down. Okay, here we go. That's right. And then the English beat. My favorite song was "Mirror in the Bathroom."
Mirror in the bathroom, please don't leave.
I
Love it.
confess. But they begat General Public. That song "Tenderness" was such a poppy song; it was crazy. And they also begat Fine Young Cannibals, who were huge in the '80s. And all they were, I drive me crazy. And that's all those songs. So it's funny, you don't know where they came. They started in this group that was considered very special. The Jam, the Special, the English Beat. There were all these bands that later begat other things. The Clash, side project later was Big Audio Dynamite, which did actually kind of dance music with other stuff in it in the late '80s. So it's like they started out punk. They started out with the Sex Pistols and all that stuff with them, but then they later kind of, Michael McLaren, who was the manager of the Sex Pistols, came out with Buffalo Gals, which was my favorite rap dance songs of all time. I mean, it's like, so you're right. It's like some of these groups started out one way. We have no idea what their influence was on other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, same thing you could say with Black Sabbath. Not a lot of people know they started off as a blues and jazz band.
Yes.
Not a lot of people know that. And then for some reason, like their influences started to change when they started listening to more, I guess, rock that was going on in that time. So a lot of the Beatles, a lot of the Led Zeppelin and stuff. And so they wanted to emulate that sound. And of course, Black Sabbath became like one of the most prominent heavy metal bands of all time. They created the genre, in my opinion. So it's really just interesting because there are a lot of people who are kind of shallow-minded when it comes to music, where they only want to listen to one thing and won't listen to anything else, but they don't realize that their heroes listen to a whole bunch of other things. And one thing I wanted to note was I was recently watching this series of Amoeba on Amoeba's YouTube channel. They have "What's in My Bag," and one of the guys on there was this bassist from a band called Mayhem, like really just crazy, infamous black metal, Norwegian black metal band from the '90s and everything.
I remember.
Known for talking about Satan burning churches and all that, and like sacrificing all this bullshit and everything. And a lot of his musical taste really was interesting. A lot of stuff I like the Cult, a lot of new wave stuff, a lot of like some R&B, and I think one jazz record on there. And I don't think a whole lot of people realize that, where we are talking about this, they either started one style, they went to something else, or they were mainly focused on this, but then rather kind of matured in a sense and kind of started experimenting with something else. So there's always room for evolution.
Well, you make a good point. Bands like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, all of them, they were into jazz and blues. That was where they started. That's it. And even with their music, my mother was a huge Led Zeppelin fan. We had all the albums in my house. There was so much blues influence on those albums. Jimmy Page's guitaring, everything, and even Robert Plant's vocal. I mean, you can't even deny it. I mean, you just can't deny it. And years later, Robert Plant did an album with Alison Krauss. It's a bluegrass album, and it works.
I love it.
It worked. I mean, but I'm like, see, because I knew the history of where he kind of came from, what he liked, it wasn't that far fetched. It's almost like Darius Rucker now does country music, but of course he's Hootie and a Blowfish. But it's the same voice. He's from the South. It's kind of like that. Actually, it makes sense. People don't just look at the appearances and go, "Well, why is he doing country music?" But I remember when that album came out, I was like, "This Alison Krauss thing, it won Grammys and stuff." But I was like, "It really works." Like, but you're right. So all these heavy metal, that was a term. That term became popular because of the Black Sabbath guys came up with that term, I think, or somebody.
I think so. There's like a whole bunch of things. There's either Black Sabbath came up with the term, Alice Cooper came up with the term.
Alice Cooper, another one.
Yeah, Gene Simmons from Kiss invented it. I guess, I don't know.
And people understand this. Alice Cooper is like a golfer in real life, and Gene Simmons, it's like he takes the makeup off, he's back to normal. And I know Paul Stanley's wife, and they're just like regular family in LA. It's like you grew up with them. I remember as a kid, it's kind of a funny thing. You used to be afraid of Kiss because when I was a kid in the '70s, they had the merchandise, they had the cartoon, and all of a sudden it was just like, you can't watch that devil music, and I can't see those cartoons. I want to see all of it.
Yeah.
It was scary. And then I meet Paul Stanley's wife, and they're just like, "Hi, what's going on, James?" Like, okay, why is this normal? They're like, "Normal. This is crazy. How was you normal? You're supposed to be eating heads off of bats and shit. I don't know what's going on there."
you really nailed something on the head right there when you said it's kind of just like forbidden, or like we're not supposed to listen to that because it's kind of called an occult thing. I mean, as a lot of people are, like especially in like Black families, Latino families, and everything, there is some sense of religion attached to it. So of course, if you're the one listening to anything like that, you're automatically seen as the antichrist. You're the devil worshiper. Why do you listen to all that bullshit and everything? And I've spent a majority of my life always trying to defend the music I love, like saying, hey, it's not only that. Like I myself, I really don't listen to much like, you know, uh, occult themes or anything like that. I'm more into like the social issues, neopolitical issues, and everything like that. Like stuff like the Bad Brains. Like Bad Brains is one of my favorite bands of all time. A lot of their stuff, a lot of people don't realize it's a lot of spiritual stuff. It's a lot of just like motivational things. One of their biggest hits is always you always have to have that PMA, positive mental attitude. So when you explain to people that don't really understand that music, they just automatically assume it's devil music, da 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 this, da 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 da. But there is like really positive stuff out there. It's more, I guess, an aggressive tone, and it doesn't sound positive. So I guess that kind of detracts people from that.
That's what it is. I think it's the tone. I know some folks in Fishbone, another popular LA
Ooh,
band.
love Fishbone.
I know they're great. And I used to go see them in shows, Suicidal Tendencies, all of them in all these shows, and a lot of that it's just always the name, which will turn people off and go, oh my god. But I'm like, actually listen to their lyrics. This is what they're talking about. Rage Against the Machine, all of them. A lot of them were talking about social issues, local issues, racial issues, government issues. It just wasn't a packaging that was just so maybe in your face and aggressive. That's what people kind of like, and they forget again. Some of those groups had Black members, half Black members. Slash is half Black. He's in Guns N' Roses. Like they don't realize that we're sprinkled throughout there. I wonder why people think. I mean, I don't know the answer, but I just wonder. And maybe you have the answer. I wonder why people think that you have to be just white. Like who made that rule that you have to be white to like that kind of music? When I know a lot of Black folks, a lot of Asian folks, a lot of Latino folks, a lot of other who love the bands with Bad Brains and Fishbone and After. I know some people who love them, and I'm like, but why is it that we can't not like them? I guess
That's just one of the things that it's just a struggle with. Like the first question we nailed at the top of the program was representation. Obviously, you see a lot of the bigger name bands, a lot of the members predominantly all white, not a lot of representation out there for colored people. Obviously, in the local scenes and everything, like myself, majority of the underground shows that I've gone to, the backyard shows I've gone to, the club shows I've gone to, a lot of the opening bands, people that look like me, dark skin. A lot of the people on the shows, people that look like me, dark skin. It's just everywhere. Like honestly, a majority of the shows I go to, majority of them, majority of Latino, few sprinkled white people in there, maybe some Black people in there, some Asian, maybe not really a lot. But then I guess it just has to do with the location of it. I mean, Southern California, predominantly Latino. So, of course, any music genre that you go to, any shows, majority of the time you're going to see a lot of Latinos there. And, why is it always considered white people music? I don't know. That's just something that I guess it's really a hard question to answer.
It's just so weird because they said, speaking of Suicidal Tendencies, they're from Venice. They had Latino members. Like, why? And you can even hear some of the influences in the vocal. So, like, but somehow you don't think of them as that. You don't bring up that part of them. And I guess, and I'm just like, well, then why? I mean, why is that being excluded or just not talked about? Like, why is that not being talked about? I don't fully understand it myself. And I'm lucky to have.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's kind of hard to describe. I mean, one of the stories I remember telling you about was this group called Death from Detroit.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. So there was a band. Well, there is still a band. They're still around.
Still around. That's why I started rumors.
So they actually started as a funk soul group. But then one of the brothers actually ended up going to, I believe, an MC5 show or an Alice Cooper show. I forget the whole story about it. And so once he heard that, he went back home, convinced his brothers to start a rock group. They named it Death. Now, when they tried to market their band and try to get signed to a label, two factors fell into it that got them not signed. One, the name of the band, Death. Kind of a controversial thing, especially back in Detroit in the like late 1970s. You
Oh
never
yeah.
really heard that type of thing. Other factor as well, like we were talking about, the music was deemed as white boy music. Why would three African American brothers be playing this type of thing anyway? And unfortunately, they never got discovered. Two of the brothers relocated up to Vermont, I believe. Started as a Christian reggae group, and it wasn't until I believe 2009 where one of the band members' sons actually discovered their music through a friend, recognizes his dad's voice in an instant, immediately picks up the phone, calls his dad. He's like, "Dad, were you in this group in the late 70s? Are you like you basically invented punk?" He's like, "Yeah, I was." And they dug up a whole crate filled with 45s and an unreleased album. And because of that and a documentary that followed with it, they just blew up and became like a kind of like an unknown gem in a sense, where it was rediscovered and everything, and now it's really beloved in the punk scene and everything.
I love
So
that. See,
yeah,
the truth comes out. The truth comes out. Things don't stay things don't stay unearthed for very long. They come out.
yeah.
I like that. I love that story. I love that.
It's just stories like that really intrigue me the most because it always comes back to the conversation, especially with punk in itself. Who invented punk music? You always think the Ramones or the Sex Pistols. Well, now you have another group predating that. And then here's a really cool part. Earlier this week, I actually discovered a band I've never heard of before from Peru, late 60s,
Oh,
that
okay.
kind of had a sound that kind of, is named punk in a sense. They're a group from the 60s in Peru called Los Psychos.
Oh, okay.
And you listen to the music, it's very surf rock
Okay.
esque,
Just big.
but then the vocals were kind of guttural in a sense, where it's just you hear dan and then you hear very raspy voice and everything. I'm just like, I was listening, I was just like, whoa, this is different. I've never heard any of this before. And reading some of the articles about that, it's just like, yeah, they're kind of the forgotten punk band in like the late 60s. And obviously they're from Peru. Nobody outside of Peru ever heard of them until, they got discovered through a 45. So it's just listening to stories like that and then covering these little gems about different little bands and everything. It's just really cool for me. It's just like unearthing a dinosaur fossil in a sense.
No, it is. It is. And there's a group that I liked back in the 70s called Pure Hell.
Oh,
Uh,
I love them out of New York. Oof.
yeah, New York. And people don't realize they were like the counterparts to New York Dolls, which they got, which of course they got a lot of attention. Love New York Dolls, whatever. And they were really good. And I Feel Bad was a song I loved back then. And I remember seeing them on some off pro. They weren't even on mainstream too. There was on some off program I saw, and they were profiling them. And I was like, wow, okay, and wow, okay, this was great. I mean, it was crazy, and they don't get a lot of attention. They don't get a lot of attention. They're pioneers also. I mean, they don't get a lot of attention, and it's just kind of it's weird what passes through and what doesn't,
Hmm.
I guess, and what becomes. And like I said, I was in the music business. There's so many folks who didn't get popular. I mean, there was so many. I have old flyers from the '80s of bands that I saw them play all the time in the Sunset Strip. They didn't become popular. They didn't get picked up. They didn't. The certain one. I remember Axl Rose and LA Guns. That's how old I
Wow.
am. Before you went into we were started Guns N' Roses. I mean, like I remember seeing. I mean, it was just like it was like they were playing around. There were all these bands that just play everywhere, and we get into all these shows, and we just get into them. My siblings and I, my coworkers, we just get into them and just watch them. And some would make it, and some would just either die off or become accountants. I mean, I don't know because they didn't get because back then the music business was not like today.
Right.
You can make your own music. I mean, yeah, you could back then and sell the back of your trunk somewhere, but I mean, like it wasn't the same like now. We have Spotify and Apple. We can just do our. Back then, it was very, very, very different system.
Did you ever feel when you were working at the record store or working in the music business at that point, you ever think of yourself like, man, if this band ever got more exposure, they would be the best? Like
There,
that must have been so difficult for you to see that like back in the day. Like how was that for you?
there's a band called Shakedown that never made it. And they put out a couple of records, rock, and I loved. Their album is my favorite albums of all time. I love every single song. Live like 10 times. You know, they played at Roxy, they played at Whiskey, they played everywhere. Just didn't get the chance. I mean, they just didn't get it. And I always say it's a shame because I have friends who are in bands. My friends who are in Monkey Bread and Whiskey Brand and all these bands and Ghost River. All my friends were in bands who were good. We had great singers, had great producers that were somebody, and somehow they just didn't. They didn't make it. They get the opportunity. And the music business, because I worked in it, the problem was they're looking for one big one and maybe a few copycats. That's it. The rest we already have 5 of those. We already have 2 of these. They didn't let everyone through the gates. Almost like a concert. The gates would open for a little bit. You 5 go in, close back up. See you next time. Sorry, you can't make it. Look at the golden ticket. You know, that kind of thing. It's very much one comes through, maybe another one that's similar, but not compete completely, but just show you have more to get some more money. They have a few more like that, and that was it. They wanted one shiny object, though. They wanted somebody they felt would be shiny. So there are a lot of bands who had shiny objects. Their lead singers were great, and the vocal and the band was tight, and you go every night live. You heard great music. They didn't get a chance. So we see it all. I mean, I have tons of promo discs and promo CDs and promo things that some I've kept. I actually have the first Beastie Boys Took and Put 12-inch. I signed it. It's worth money. It's totally worth money. Nice. I got it because I worked in a record store and I was like, oh, I like the song. And I got it, but the girl was in the group. So I have it. And there was 4 members and the cover and everything. But again, they could have died off like everybody else. I mean, they could have not made it. So I just happened to have it. When I was looking, I was like, oh, I still have it. Oh, okay. I have promo pressings of things that were sent out to radio that just never got played. I was a music junkie, so I was just like, just give me all of it. Give me all of it. And I was a DJ at one point, so I'd play my own. I just play songs I felt like playing anyway, and it was tough. It was very tough to watch. And we knew some of the guys, some of the girls who were in these groups, and I felt bad for them because they really worked hard for years. I mean, they were out there for years. Right, like in San Francisco, my friends work at a place called the Octopus Lounge, or the Independent, or the Fillmore. Or they would play every night somewhere, and $2 cover, $5 cover, whatever. I'd go and we drink, back then I used to drink beer. I don't drink beer anymore. We drink beer, whatever, and support them. You get all your friends together and try to support them so they can get attention. Like you're trying to help them get attention, because every once in a while a record label would come in. Kirsten Marie says, have you heard of a band called Jupiter Rising? They're from LA. That sounds familiar.
I have. Yeah, I have.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Jupiter Rising, I've only heard a few of their songs. I really like them. I got to listen a little bit more to get a little bit more in depth. But yeah, I just started getting into them maybe actually a few months ago, actually. I started getting into them.
I will revisit them. That name sounds familiar. I just can't remember. I can't think of any of their songs. If you tell me a name of a song that possibly may have been something, let me know. Because I don't know. I got to look at them. But that's the point. There's so many of those, and you mentioned Amoeba, which is my holy place.
Have you gone to the new location yet?
I haven't either. I haven't gone there either yet.
I haven't.
I want to go too. I haven't been there yet. I'm gonna go soon because now I'm vaccinated. I'm gonna go. But Amoeba was my place. I know the guys that work there. We all laugh and stuff. It's a treasure trove of unsigned or artists that had one release. They had one single go out, or maybe a 12-inch or whatever. It's completely, it's one of those things where you could really discover new music. I mean, you have every genre out there. If you like so-and-so, try these 4 other people too. And you start listening to it, you go, God, I wish where are they now? Like, what are they doing now? What's going on? And I actually contacted a few folks years ago and did interviews with them on my shows. I was like, nice. I like you. I have your CD. And I brought them on. They were happy to talk to you. They were like, let's talk about it. Let's talk music.
That is so cool.
Falling Away is one of Jupiter Rising songs. Okay, I will look that up. I don't know very much. So speaking of some of that, some of the Black groups that changed my life. I saw them in concert. I saw King's X in San Francisco years ago.
Doug Pinnick.
And lead singer was really good, very eccentric, but he had a huge mohawk. That's the first time I saw a Black guy with a mohawk. Really, it was giant. But it was Living Color, who opened for Rolling Stones and '89 Steel Wheels tour. That really changed my life. I was like, these guys are Black, and they're like, they had this shaved head. They had dreadlocks, and they were thrashing around. I was like, oh, okay. And the songs were good and they were catchy. And I was like, I really was very impressed by them. They play and the crowd loved them. I mean, just saying, it wasn't like they didn't boo them off the stage or nothing. But we were like, oh, okay, opening act. Okay, they were good. And I saw them one more time solo. I mean, not solo, away from them. But they turned around because I hadn't seen the video on MTV yet, back in MTV days, when they showed videos. They showed they had one of their songs, that was Times Over Song. One of their songs was huge. And on
Call of Personality.
Call Personality, thank you. And I hadn't seen that yet. So I saw like, oh, okay. Again, representation matters. I'm seeing these guys on stage who are brown. And I think Josh, you're browner than I am, actually. I'm looking at you going, I think you're browner than I am.
Maybe, I don't know.
Or close. Look how close. We're close. You're my cousin.
There you go.
No, but it's like, but to see them because they were like brown to darker skin. Kings same thing, brown to darker skin. It wasn't like light skin, nothing wrong with that, but saying they were actually, you looked at them, there was no denying they were African American. Like there was no like guessing game or male other. And that to me was really impressive. I was like, wow, and they actually held the crowd. And I love them. So I want to mention, you mentioned about something change your life. I also want to mention something. I was watching a documentary on Prince, my favorite artist of all time. And when he did his Dirty Mind album, I remember when it came out in 1981, it was a very new wave album. And Warner Brothers didn't want to put it out. Because his first two albums were R&B disco. They were all like, I want to be your lover and all that kind of stuff. Good songs, everything like that. But he would have put out in his songs like Sister and Head and all those songs. And the song Dirty Mind is the bomb, folks. You don't know the actual title track is the bomb. When You Were Mine, which Cyndi Lauper covered later. But it was a very new wave album. But because he was black, they were like, what do we do with this? He's like, fucking release it. That's what you do with it. And let the audience decide. And I remember the album came out. It changed my life also because he had the buttons and the skinny tie. He did this. It was just happened to be mixed race, whatever he is, but he was black. I mean, he basically was a black guy, and so that was kind of like, ooh. I'm like, yes. And I remember how hard that was to find. We're going to the record store trying to find it, and it wasn't in the rock section, the new wave section. It was still in the back then they called it the black section.
Oh,
not even R&B. It was black.
Wow.
I remember that. Tower Records. I remember that. This is the 80s, kid. It wasn't even that long ago.
Listen, I can only imagine if just the outroar if that were to happen nowadays.
I can show you your face later. Your face was blown. No, that's how it was back then.
Oh my goodness, that's just insane. Like that is just
I had to find Madonna when she first came out in the black section.
Why was Madonna in the black section?
Because she was black. So when Madonna came out, this is funny. So Madonna came out, I'm not talking like a virgin, just before that. So when she came out with Everybody and Physical Attraction and stuff, she had no face on the cover.
Okay.
It was just a generic cover. And we all thought, we're going to name their kid Madonna, but some black person probably. As we kept thinking, or Latina. We're thinking one of the two, right? So they have to be
Madonna.
Exactly. Everybody else. So we all thought, and the songs were very dancey and R&B-ish. So we went to look for it and it was in the black section. And it was black section.
Wow.
Then she came out with Burning Up, and we saw the video. And then she went on a show called Solid Gold, which is gone now. And she came out, and I remember all our friends on our phones, oh my God, she's white. Like the telephone tree just went around everywhere. And ask anybody from that time period, they'll tell you. They're like, we were like, this bitch is white. Okay, got it. And the rest is history. But I mean, she was in the black section also.
Wow.
There's no face. There's no face. Man, I love your face. I love your face. You're totally shocked. I know.
I have no words.
They called it black music. It was like literally, it was like pop, rock, black music, jazz. And black represented R&B. Later they changed it to R&B, but it was black. There was no rap section. There was no hip hop section. It was all just under black.
And how did you feel about that at that point? Like, was there any part of you? It was just.
Oh yeah.
Like, was it like similar to my reaction? I'm just like, what the fuck is this?
Well, I mean, we grew up that way. So in a way, it was like, It was called black music. I mean, it was always called black music.
Okay.
Most of the time it was all black music. So I mean, I was kind of like, it's like growing, but it was offensive to us going, this is not just, it's not, because there were white artists like Hall and Oates and Elton John and George Michael and Wham who sounded black and did black, and Tina Marie, who were white but did R&B music. So it's kind of like, well, it should just be R&B music, not just black, because they're actually doing stuff, and they were huge in the black communities. Lisa Stansfield, they're all huge. Black folks love some Hall and Oates. They love some Hall and Oates. They love some Tina Marie. They were associated with with Rick James and all that. It was considered. It was R. They weren't pop. They were R. I mean, Tina Marie was R&B, but she was a white girl. So then why is she? It was such a weird segregation. It was a weird classification. I was going to say a weird classification that we didn't like that, and they finally changed it.
That's just mind-boggling. Like
there was no section for you. You looking at us. There was no Latin section. It was like other. It was like music was like other.
Well, funny that you say that, because I remember, in middle school or in high school, there was this record store. Actually, I live in the Silver Lake area, Echo Park area. So, Rockaway Records is like just up the street from me right there. One of like the most iconic places in the Silver Lake neighborhood. I just remember going into that so many times and seeing all these musical genres and everything. And then I see the Latin section, and, the Latin section is not just, when you think of the term Latin, it's just a whole bunch of different things. Then I remember just seeing like purely all Mexican CDs in there, just like a little bit of, stuff outside of Mexico. And, obviously in no correlation or anything like that in comparison to like the black section, because, when you mention it's just black music, black section right there, that's just unbelievable. Like that is in no comparison to like seeing a Latin thing, because Latin, you could categorize it in some sense in an umbrella term, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm saying though, but I want to say just when you're in the defense of that, because I'm also half Latino also. The point is, it's still kind of offensive in the sense that you're grouping all the Latin America
into one. One.
That's so I know where you're getting at with that. There is some offense to that, because me coming from living on the West Coast, grew up in Los Angeles, where it was Mexican, most and then Central American, but then having Puerto Rican family and being in the East Coast, where you heard salsa, bachata, and all that, and merengue and all that, which is very different. And then it was very tropical. It was all very tropical music. So those two styles were very different. When I was in LA and I had a lot of Mexican friends, of course there was Jose and Vicente Fernandez and Los Ticos del Norte. I mean, they were all like, I know all their songs, I know all that stuff. It's like, but it was such a stereotype in a sense that when they said Latin music, that's all they would feature in those sections. You're like, but there's also Shakira down here. And you have Tejano music over here with Selena and all them. And then you have Santa Cruz, and you have, it's like Latin music. We're talking South America. We're talking Central America. We're talking the Eastern Caribbean, the Western Caribbean, and then Mexico, as you know, different parts of Mexico have different types of stuff. Guatemala is different than Chile, and Chile is different than Peru, and Peru is different than Venezuela, different than Ecuador. I mean, like it's just
exactly.
That's what I'm saying. I get, and I agree with you. It's just always like, well, they should always be lumped together.
Yeah, no, and you hit it to the point right there. A lot of these countries have their own version of music that is, I guess, acceptable here in the United States. Like, why does it all have to be lumped into one category as black or Latin music? There is such thing as Latin jazz. There is such thing as Latin hip hop. There is such thing as a couple weeks ago I shared that there's Japanese cumbia.
Right.
Who would have thought?
Who knew? Actually, I saw after you said that, my niece, who's Mexican, sent me a TikTok of a Japanese cumbia band. I was like, she sounded good too. I was like, okay, girl. Which again, why are we surprised? Because K-pop, J-pop, that's all R&B. That's all that is. They're mimicking us. They're mimicking what is music. You know, I mean, I played that album, Donde Está Las Ladronas, to death. I played that album to death. I was like, and she was hot. She had the dark, I think she had dark hair, and she had the eyes. I was like, okay, go on, girl. I was in. I was all in. And she went blonde when she came to America. That's another story. But I was totally into that. And she was dark
Right.
and brooding, and you know, and emo, and just like the songs were just like deep and so. But I was like, so that exists. So that made me look up more music down there and go, what else is out there?
Hmm.
And there's a lot of, I found a lot of bands and a lot of folks that were doing like Lale and all that. I found them out because I was checking on so and so, and that led. It's a connect the dots thing. You know this. You
Yeah.
find a band, you want to hear more of stuff. Oh, there's them. Oh, there's them.
I just love going down those rabbit holes. You start off with like, I guess, the biggest person within a
Yes.
scene or anything like that, and then just kind of just go, okay, down, 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 and you find like the most obscure little thing ever, but it's
Yeah.
the greatest to you because it led you from like hearing what people perceive as the most popular thing, the most mainstream thing, and then to having like your own cult favorite type of thing. Like in like giving a value or appreciation to like a band that maybe had never gotten recognized in the public view. So just becoming a new fan of them in a sense, or whoever it is, I think it brings like a lot of relevance to that because that's where word of mouth starts to come in, and that's where that level of appreciation and the level of, making a band notable come into fruition. And I think that's really important in any scene that we always appreciate anyone who's giving their best and their all to whatever the music they're creating.
Well, I try to tell people in the '80s, especially, that's when it was really the heyday of we all genres just mixed together. We all liked all kinds of music. Black folks liked white people, and white folks liked black music. I mean, it was one of those things where the public was into everything. And a lot of concerts I went to, they were very mixed. I mean, it was very much
Mhm.
it wasn't so segregated. The '70s was a little more segregated, maybe even the '90s got a little bit of that too, got a little separated. But in the '80s, my generation just was like, we're taking it all in. We like it all. We want to hear it all, and it was a very different time period. And if you look at the music of the '80s, no matter what it sounds '80s. Like I always say, when you hear the first two notes, you're like, that's '80s. Whether it's
Yeah.
Missing Persons or Berlin or The Cure or Erasure or Culture Club or like it doesn't matter. And they say going back to like a Blondie or or even '80s Talking Heads or even any of those groups, like it sounds very '80s, but that's because we kind of liked everything. Like everything was accepted.
Hmm.
And we just kind of, I mean, the biggest stars were Prince, Madonna, Michael Jackson. I mean, they were, that right there alone. Bruce Springsteen was a big star. Tom Petty was a big star. But there was like these, these big stars in that band. It was very mixture. The '90s continued that somewhat, but it did kind of, there was grunge, there was alternative. They said that there was the new metal, there was the rock rap, there was, then there was hardcore rap, gangster rap. Then there was like the dancey, conscious rap, which was my favorite thing. I was a big conscious rap person. I was a De La Soul, Jungle Brother, Tribe Called Quest.
Oh,
That was my
hell yeah. Yep. Yep.
of. I was all about the Daisy. My mother, they were hippies, so they kind of continued the hippie thing, risk development,
Mhm.
all that. That was my PM Dawn. That was my whole little. I loved all that. That was my thing. But gangster rap came out to it. Everything was very much these separate camps in the '90s, kind of. The boy bands came later, Spice Girls came later. That was a whole different camp too. And you can only like them. You can't like it, like you said, you can't like anybody else. It was but the '80s was like you could like Culture Club and Metallica.
Yeah.
You could like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and ABC or little Duran Duran. Like for some reason, it was no big deal.
I just always think to myself, and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking on behalf of a whole lot of people, especially people in my generation. We always look at the 80s as the best time in music. You had MTV, coming up in its infancy right there. So many music videos coming out, and not just one type of music, everything. And then when Headbangers Ball came out as well, then that got some representation onto that too. And then it's just that's what we're kind of missing nowadays. Obviously, we have YouTube and we have a whole bunch of music platforms and everything like that. That it's still viable to have music videos, but I feel like just as far as just like cultural resonance or anything like that, we need something like that again. And it's a shame that we have a channel called Music Television, but there's rarely any music on it. It's just I don't even know what to say it is
But there isn't.
anymore. I mean,
It's funny because
I remember growing up.
you're go ahead. Yes.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying
No, no,
there's.
no. I forgot the point I was gonna make.
Oh, well, I was saying you're getting old. That's how we forget things. We'll get it out. No, here's the thing. So now there's MTV. And when you get older, just so if you don't get it out now, you forget it. I know it's kind of crazy. No, but MTV has a channel called MTV Classic. If you have certain cable stuff, and
Yeah.
that's what they'll do. They'll do the 120 minutes, which was the alternative one, Headbangers Ball, and Hair Nation. You go, wow, I remember all. I used to sit and just watch videos all day long and see all the artists, and I miss it. I do. I agree with you completely. It was an event. You know, when a video came out, it was an event. They have them now. I mean, I feel like an old man now. Back in the day, but I mean, now they do kind of like when WAP came out, that was a big event. The Lil Nas X thing, of course, was a big event. But yeah, I think that does happen. But back then, it was just much more. And you watched them together. You call each other up. You see that? Oh my God, you see that? It was I love the '80s. I'm stuck in the '80s. I listen to '80s music all the time. I like '90s music. I do like '90s also. I've been playing a lot of '90s dance recently just because I've been in the mood for some reason. But the '80s they're a magical time for me. I mean, I was coming of age in the '80s. I entered the '80s at age 11 and I left at 21. I mean, it was like that's a whole major time period to grow up. I became an adult, I became a parent, I became an adult in the '80s. Like I graduated high school in the '80s. I mean, I went to college in the I mean, everything was now, and so all those songs are literally the soundtrack of my life. I mean, I did a lot of bad things in the '80s. I shouldn't have did. I can tell you there's some stories I will not tell on here. My book will come out one day. I will tell my book one day. But I have some stories of the '80s and the Sunset Strip, things I saw I shouldn't have seen. How young, I was a latchkey kid. How young I was with my siblings after work. I mean, my brother Max, who passed away 5 years ago, who I miss every day. He was a person who worked with me, and he was my older brother. So he would take me out. My sister Samantha, they would take me out. We had our Thai food restaurants. You go eat at 5 a.m. afterwards. All that stuff you can't do now. My stomach would kill me. But back then it was like we literally went. You know how it is, Josh. You know how it is. Your whole metabolism changes as you get older.
Oh yeah.
No more chili cheese dogs at 3 a.m. That does not. No, I'm
No.
toilet. But I remember going to shows, and we went to see the show. Like we were going to them. Yeah, we were up all night. Sometimes we were drinking. I've done a few other things. It was the '80s, but we were there for the show and getting to know the band members, getting to know the other people. There's so many guys in that time period are gone that I missed. That were just so much fun, and we were all there for a good time. I mean, it's kind of like I wouldn't want my kids to do it now today. I'm like, no, you can't do that now at 15, 16 years old. But for me, it was a different time, Josh. But I heard so much good music and I saw so much, and I maybe gonna think about, because we're opening back up again a little bit, I'm missing live. I miss live, Josh.
Absolutely.
I know you like me, go to shows. I miss going to shows. Can you wait? Are you ready? Are you ready, Josh? Go to shows?
I personally, right now, am not ready. I know a lot of social media right now at the moment showing a lot of clips of what's going on at a lot of underground punk shows, that they're just straight up popping up at like a random park somewhere in LA, and they're just like massive amount of people just showing up, just fucking shit up, just doing some stuff that is just unspeakable right now between like the live YouTube audience and whatnot, and then just so much crazy stuff. And then I'm just like, yeah, that's a year's worth of pent up frustration and rage coming out at those shows. And seeing some of the footage, I'm just like, wow, that is just too crazy for me. I'm just gonna wait until it dies down a little bit, and then I'll go.
Yes, I know. Well, I mean, for me, I'm looking to see if they're going to. And I've seen some places where they take precautions and they're doing this kind of spread out stuff. And I know folks are starting to go to the games again. They're starting to have it where you don't sell out the whole section. So I'm waiting to see if, like, the Greek Theater, I mean, the outdoor venues first, the Greek Theater, the Hollywood Bowl. I'm waiting to see how they do. If they're going to have it where it's like it's spread out, it's very cleaned up, you have your section, then I might be ready to go again. But I mean, indoor theaters, indoor things like the Forum or Pantages Theater, things like that. Yeah, I'm being a little cautious. I'm not ready. I mean, movie theaters are back open. I'm afraid to go to a movie theater. I'm not doing that yet. I got a
Yeah,
giant TV
no,
right here. I just watch
absolutely.
on TV. But I do, miss, but Josh, I do miss live stage stuff. I miss it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously now it's going to be a little bit of a different climate now because obviously if you go to a general, a general, what's it called, the general attendance, general admittance, I forget the actual term for it, but you're standing close to people. Oh, general admission, thank you. General admission, yes. So if you go to a general admission show, you're standing like pretty much just like inches away from the next person. And I remember like going to so many shows and being a part of that crowd and everything.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the same thing now? Who knows? I mean, I've heard so many rumors of just like certain venues saying no moshing is allowed, no this is allowed, no that's allowed, and everything. I'm just like, okay, those type of rules have always been in place every time, and every time, like I'd go to a show, someone would always rip up the rules, or literally pull the sign off the wall and just chuck that shit into the trash can and everything. Is that how it's going to be? Yeah, because people obviously there is going to be a certain level of caution if you do go to shows in person, especially if it's an indoor setting and you're going to have a whole bunch of people inside. If it's an outdoor setting, like you'd mentioned, like somewhere in the Hollywood Bowl or Greek Theater, I'm imagining they are going to have certain precautions, and it's easier because it's generally a lot of seats and everything. But I can only imagine how people would react, especially if you have one person who is very cautious about their health and everything going on in the world, and you have someone who's there who just blatantly doesn't give a shit about anything going on in the world. So there's always going to be a certain amount of conflict. And I always feel like there's going to be some level of just like, oh, you're overreacting too much. There's no such thing as a virus, or, you're going to have another person saying, oh, the virus is real, da 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 this. And so I think that in itself will take the fun out of going to live shows, especially for general admission. It will. I think it'll be enjoyable if it's like a seated arena and everything, but then it's just human nature for us to want to get up and want to move and want to dance around with people. And is there an actual solution to how to do this? Who knows? It's pretty much just like a case by case basis and see what each venue does. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I said I'm waiting to see what they're going to do. Because I know they want to go back in business. They want to, and I think now forever we are now changed. I think it's going to be, especially in California. I can't think for anywhere else. I know in California, probably New York
Right.
too, probably the coasts where they were hit the hardest. I think it's going to be very much a precautionary thing of like, how do we do this so that we can kind of get people in here, make some money, and get back to almost normalcy? And I think it's going to be half capacity, quarter capacity shows. It's going to be where we can't sell it out. So what does that mean to an artist who usually sells out? Like, what does that mean? Does it sell out mean now, instead of a 1,000-seat theater, we're going to sell out 400 seats of it? So is that the new sellout? You sell out for all 400? Is that the new sellout? I mean, it's going to be interesting on the pocketbook and on the optics. I'm very curious to see what this is going to look like, especially in LA, because there's so many venues, big and small, especially a lot of small.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for them? There are 49-seat theaters, 29-seat theaters, 99-seat theaters. What does that mean for them? Our friend Mark J. Freeman works for Odyssey Theater over in Hollywood. It's like, what does that mean for them? Do they cut everything down to 49 seats now, half of it, and you spread it out? Can you make money that way? Do ticket prices go up to meet the demand? I noticed that with plane tickets. I'm going to Vegas for my birthday in a few weeks. My first trip
Okay.
outside of California in a year. I'm taking my precautions. I got everything there, but I was looking for plane tickets. I'm actually going to end up driving, but plane tickets super expensive. They're trying to make up for the year they probably lost tickets. So theater, same thing.
Yeah.
Prices, will they go up to make the demand, to make up for what they're not making? Because the venue probably has a percentage they get from the show, and if the show is now just half capacity of 40%, what does that mean for us? So I'm very curious. This is a whole other discussion. I love it. It's one of those things. I'm very curious.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I'm very curious what happens, especially for the smaller venues. Like, will they be able to operate?
Yeah.
Safely?
And of course, you think about not only the the ticket admission price, but what about like drinks? What about food? What about parking? Like, does that go up as well?
They're already high already. Jeez, they were before pandemic. Up there. If you want a drink, and that'd be $10. I'll bring my flask in. I'll do it myself. But you know what I mean. But that's true. That's true too, because you're right. There's a domino effect. So and I was wondering, because I know these games are starting. People are going to Dodger games. I guess are starting. I was wondering, how are the drinks there? How is the food there? It's already high as it is. Is it now higher because there's less folks being let in? Basketball, Staples Center, when it finally decides to open, I'm curious what that's going to be like too. It's like, what is that going to be like for us? Will the experience be much more? I know everybody's going to Disneyland right now. If you're in Los Angeles, everybody's going to Disneyland right now. The prices are expensive. My siblings did that. I'm like, ooh, okay, but they got to make money. They're closed for a year. I mean, they were literally closed down for a year. They got to figure it out. So I'm with you, Josh. I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out, money wise. And will I be like, fuck it, and not do it? I'll just stay at home and watch it on TV or something. I like concerts and stuff. I miss it, but I'm not going to break my bank trying to go see something either. I mean, I want to support venues.
Exactly.
I don't want to sound like that either. I want to support venues. I think art's very important. I advocate art all the time. I'm an artist myself. We're artists, but also I'm not rich. Just by how I look. This show is $5. No, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm not. I want to support art. I don't want to say I don't want to support. I do want to support art, but also I gotta be careful with my money. Yeah. And safety.
And I think a whole lot of people are gonna get upset about that. Like, if they do start seeing like a lot of prices raise and everything, and a year with a lot of people who are out of work, a lot of people are gonna start complaining, and that's just another whole other can of worms. And I don't know. It's just, as someone who, like 10 years ago, when I first started going to shows at 18 and 19, I remember going to shows every other week or so with like a group of friends and everything. And comparing it to that, and comparing it to now, like, if everything's gonna go up in price and everything, you're just kind of sitting there just like, okay, I wish I can go to these shows. And like you said, I wish I can go and support all these people, but what's gonna change? Like, our precautions going to be made for our safety. And what about my wallet? I don't want to break the bank just by going just to see one show thing and not a lot of people being there and not being able to experience like the whole normalcy of it. So it's going to be very interesting if there is going to be a sense of normal when everything starts to open up again.
I also think it'll be interesting too, in terms of will I start being picky on what I go see? Before, it was like, all right, I like everybody. I like these 10 artists. I'll go see them. Will it become, I'll see these 3 this year? That's what I can afford. I can't afford the other 6. I would see throughout the year. As they come to town, which ones am I willing to pay for? It's gonna become that more too. Like, which are like, I love Janet Jackson, but I did see her twice before, so I'll pass. Where if it wasn't that expensive, I would go normally. It goes, Janet coming again, sure.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, Metallica's coming through. I've seen Metallica several times already in the past. I'm like, well, then I may opt out, where normally it was a given. I'm going to see them. It's a tradition. I'm gonna go see them. I mean, for me, if Prince was still alive, I went to every concert, almost every concert he went on. So I'm saying, I was like, would I choose differently now and go, well, I've seen Prince like 8 times. I mean, do I need to see him again? Well, of course I would enjoy it. It'd be a great concert, but if it's expensive, then and the precautions aren't made, it can't be just more of take your temperature. It has to be more than that, because you can't trust people. Also, everybody's different. There are folks who are anti-mask, anti-vaccination. We don't know what's going on with everybody. It's like it's you just don't know. I mean, everybody has the right to choose what they want, but then I would choose to decide who I'm going to hang out with and let into my bubble. I don't want to be shoulder to shoulder.
Exactly.
And they're like, they have it, or they're this, or the possibility, and then I'm suddenly, even though I have a vaccination, but still, I don't want that possibility. I don't want that possibility if I can avoid it. There's situations you can't avoid, but then there's some you can. So very interesting.
Totally, 100% agree.
Thank you for being on my show. This is fun. Let's come back again. Let's come back and do this again. This was a lot of fun.
Will do.
This is a lot of fun.
Thank you. Maybe next time we'll talk about 80s. We'll talk about 80s art scenes next time. I don't know.
Ooh, okay. I'm writing it down. 80s art scene. That's gonna be next. Okay, that's gonna be next. Okay, you come on another time. You know I'm a doer. I don't just talk. I'm a doer. So 80s art.
Oh no. I'll suggest like any obscure random topic, and I know I'll be on your guest on your show for that.
You will. Mhm. I'll give you a couple of weeks. You'll be back on again. I wrote down. Josh Alonzo, thanks for
Sounds
the
good.
show. Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me all on Instagram, Twitter, and on TikTok at JOAL323.
Yes, and you can find me on TikTok too, folks. Oh, God. That video about the bread refrigerator. Every day, someone else goes, I
Boy.
saw you, Uncle James. I saw you. My grandson, I saw you. I'm like, oh my God. So yes, I'm a TikTok.
I just, you know what? I hate to be one of those numbers again, but I saw another video today. I'm just like, oh boy.
It's so it's crazy. You're like, I know him, my friend. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't even know how to handle it. But yes, that's me on TikTok at James Lott Jr. You can follow me. We're all James Lott Jr. Just sold at James Lott Jr. on all social media platforms. And of course, this is JLJ Media. This is my network. Down here somewhere, there's a subscribe button. Hit it if you hadn't already. And subscribe to my channel. I have all kinds of shows. There are 38 shows out there. So do that. And on audio version, we are everywhere. You stream stuff. We're everywhere. I have audio dramas. I have music. I have all kinds of stuff that are out there. And actually, speaking of music, I just released a promo video for my new song. 5 years ago on my birthday, I released my first song ever. And it started my recording career. The song is called I Am Ready. And so for the remix, the anniversary remix, I got my friends who I've done songs with, Flobo Boys, Mike Brown, Ryan M. Shaw, and Cesar Espino. They did a remix to my song, and it's going to be coming out on my birthday, May 10th. But I just you can go on my Instagram or on my Twitter, or whatever, because you can hear you actually hear the promo. It came out really well. So I've been 5 years in the business of that business, which for you guys out there, I was in my late 40s when I started. So it doesn't matter when you start. But I'm making music, and I have 2 new albums coming out this year. So keep that in mind. And you can follow all my music on Amazon, Google, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you find music, it's out there under James Lott Jr. Everybody, please take care of yourselves. Go out and discover new music, seriously, whether it's from today or in the past. There's so much music. And one of the ways you can do that, if you're on Spotify or on Apple, you usually have a thing that says artists also like. There's like a button, fans also like. Hit that button and see if there's some artists you've never heard before, and check those out. Check those out. Support the art, support the artists, and we'll see you next time.
See, before we go, let's see. Oh, here you go.
Here you go. So show us.
Random vinyl. If you guys like punk, I guess I just pulled up the Discharge album. So go ahead and listen to this. If you like English UK, like 1982 type style punk. So.
We do. And vinyl's good, folks. We called it records back then, but that's called vinyl now. And vinyl's the only of all of the oh my God, you call them styles of all the medias that's growing. So there was cassettes, CDs, but vinyl actually has been growing every year for the last